if Susie Q is over here rocking and rolling in her industry, but the thing is Susie Q isn't you, and you have a way of shining your light like nobody else. Someone out there needs what only you can offer. Welcome to the Passion Pursuit podcast. I'm your host, Haley Thomas, and I'm obsessed with helping you create a business that supports the life you dream about. I'm a multi-passionate creative who let her curiosity take her down the unconventional path of entrepreneurship. I have worked with many entrepreneurs just like you who desired to make an impact and an income by doing what lights them up. Get ready to learn about the strategies, shifts, and stories that will equip and inspire you to take action. This is the space where dreams become reality. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Passion Pursuit podcast. I wanted to take a moment before we dive in today to just express my gratitude for you being here, for you listening and tuning in, whether this is your first episode or you've listened to all 7 before this. I just want to say thank you. Every listen, every share, every review helps this podcast to continue to expand its reach and helps me to continue to find out more about what you need so that you can continue to start your business, scale your dream, and live the life that you desire. And that's all thanks to you. So if you have questions, if you want me to dive into a certain subject, please know my DM on Instagram is always open and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have been listening and maybe haven't left a review quite yet, I'd love to hear your takeaways from a past episode so that we can continue to grow this podcast and create things that are most supportive to you. So on that note, let's go ahead and dig into the good stuff, shall we? Today, I am talking about a topic that I am really freaking passionate about and is something that we can all be empowered by no matter what level, stage of business or passion pursuit that we are in. And that is the topic of confidence and how to step into your confidence as an entrepreneur. A lot of the times we wait until we feel our best or our most confident selves to even start pursuing the things that we want to do. But if I could just kick us off with a little mic drop, little nugget that you should probably write down, it is this. Confidence comes from taking action. Okay? Write that down. Confidence comes from taking action. No one starts feeling their absolute best. Everyone starts as a beginner, but the goal is to start no matter how you feel, whether it is confident or maybe not so much. And so my goal today in this episode is to help you go from the mindset of, oh, I wish I could do this, I don't know, and you're kind of like sitting on your hands, waiting for that right moment to, heck yes, I can do this. Who am I not to do this? But the thing about this episode, and I want to be really clear, is that I'm not here to tell you how to be confident. And you're probably like, okay, Haley, how is this going to help me then? I need to know the tips to step into my confidence. But the thing is, confidence comes from within. That can only come from you. You are the only one who can unleash that Sasha Fierce that lives within you. And if you don't know what that means, that's Beyonce's alter ego that she talks about in a way to activate that inner confidence, that inner higher self, okay? So my goal is to help bring awareness to you today to figure out what may be standing in the way and what may be actually blocking that Sasha Fierce from being fully expressed and out there into the world. When you have a better understanding of what obstacles are standing between you and that, you'll be able to navigate it a lot better. So let's get started by digging into the 5 blocks that you may be experiencing that are holding you back from your most confident self. The first one, perfectionism. Oh my goodness. I have lived this. I have felt this to my core. Everything has to be perfect before I begin, right? And I also too want to say that as I'm sharing these things, these are things that I am still actively learning and embodying. These are not things that you learn overnight and suddenly you're not a perfectionist anymore. I will jokingly say I'm a recovering perfectionist because this is a lifelong journey, okay? But I want to talk about perfectionism in this way. and share a little story with you. So, a few years back, when I was just starting my business, I had this idea of creating a video series. Now, if you've been around since the beginning, it was called the Level Up series. It's actually still live on my YouTube account. And this video series, you guys, was something that I talked about for months. I talked and I talked and I talked, and it made for a lot of great conversation, but it wasn't ever something that I started because, to be honest, I didn't know who to interview. I didn't know how to interview. I didn't know how to record, how to edit, how to launch it, where it would go, all these things that stopped me. And the other aspect of this too was, okay, if I learned all those things, I still would hold myself back because then I would try to perfect it, right? Like I wanted to bring it out into the world in this really refined, strategic way. I wanted it to be perfect. And so even though it was this great idea, I was so terrified to mess it up that I stopped myself before I even began. And then I shared it with a friend. And thank goodness for community. I'm going to preach this on a lot of episodes because community really does make all the difference when you are pursuing a dream. And she's like, why not just set a date? That will kick you into gear. You won't be able to turn back. If you set a date for this thing that you want to do, you will figure it out. You are a find a way, make a way woman. And again, thank goodness for that support because I set the date, and 2.5 weeks out from this idea just being something that lived in my head, it suddenly became something that was a reality. I was in the midst of recording. I was editing videos. I was putting things out there into the world. I was creating questions and outlines that I would use to interview. And all of a sudden, as I got started, I realized that this actually wasn't as big of a deal as I was making it out to be. And honestly, a lot of situations like that have come up in my business where I have put something aside because I thought it would take too long, or I was trying to make it perfect, or I wanted to have the right words or whatever, and I put it to the side. And then I realized once I actually did the thing that it wasn't all that hard to begin with. So was that video series absolutely perfect? No, you can watch it and you can tell me it was not perfect. I definitely stumbled on my words. My editing skills are not great. I am not a video editor, never claimed to be. Did I have a perfect launch strategy when it was put out there in the world? No. However, it taught me so much because I decided to do it regardless. And to be honest, if you're not learning, you're not growing. And that's a part of this process too, is to constantly be open to the lessons that this experience and pursuing the thing will teach you along the way. So I learned a lot. And it helped me to recognize that things don't have to be perfect. In fact, I always say progress is better than perfection. I heard this recently on a training, and they said, I'd rather do B plus work and get it out there in the world than always wait for me to always be at my A plus and never put anything out. And I was like, yes, I can get behind that. Like, can we snap for that? Let's just get the thing out there so we can make an impact. It does no one any good by sitting in your head or sitting on the notes app of your cell phone. Do you know how many ideas I have on my cell phone right now? And I will say this to my clients, and I remind myself of this, that the notes section of my phone is where ideas go to die because I wait for them to be perfect, okay? Let's get them out, let's map them out, and let's take those steps to get them started and to get them out into the world without worrying that every single aspect of that thing needs to be perfect, okay? Let's make a pact here. So, how can we overcome perfectionism? Well, first, you can set a date and do what I did and just rip the band-aid off and go for it. So, maybe you've been wanting to start a business of your own or launch a new service or product. Put a date on the calendar, and I'm telling you, your process will speed up a lot more, and you'll realize that, okay, it's go time. Like, we can make this happen. And when you do that, be bendable. Be willing to know that things will shift and things will change. You will most likely have to pivot because as you continue on, you're going to learn more and more as you go through this process. You will never be fully ready. You will never have all of your ducks in a row, and that is okay. It's actually a blessing in disguise because chances are, if you have everything to plan by every single detail, you may potentially be closing yourself off from potential new ideas, potential relationships, and potential opportunities that you would have never known because you were so stuck in your perfectionism and in your own plan. And so give yourself the opportunity to be open, okay? No business is stagnant. We have to remember that if you are engulfed into the deep end of doing all the things, that you get to change things as you go, Remind yourself that you're human. It's about the progress, not perfection. Diving into the second thing, I want to talk about this idea of having a scarcity mindset over an abundance mindset and how that oftentimes can actually be us lacking that confidence when we're stuck in that place of scarcity. This also tends to be when comparison creeps up. Now, raise your hand if you have struggled with comparison, right? Like we all have, okay? And this was a tough one for me personally as well, because scarcity stems from a disbelief in what we have to offer, or a worry that it may go away, or that there's not enough for everyone. And when we are looking left and right at what other people are doing, people who are already rocking and rolling and doing what they love, and it's similar to what we want to do, especially when there's like some major leaders in the industry that have these giant multi-million-dollar businesses and we're starting from literally nothing, it can be incredibly paralyzing and overwhelming to even begin. And especially so if you stay in that place of, well, if someone's already doing this, then who am I to do this? And recently it hit me like a ton of bricks. Have you ever listened to a podcast or a training and someone is speaking on something and you're like, okay, I've heard this before, but for some reason that day, at that moment, with that person telling you, it hits you in your core and completely changes a mindset thing for you, or maybe even changes your life, right? And it made me realize that that person said it differently. They said it uniquely. They said it in their own way for you to have that major aha moment. So when you think about this, if Susie Q is over here rocking and rolling in her industry, but the thing is, Susie Q isn't you, and you have a way of shining your light like nobody else. Someone out there needs what only you can offer. And there are trillions of people in this world, okay? Susie Q cannot help all of them. Like we gotta help each other, right? It's about the community over the competition. When we think about that, it really opens up that perspective as well. So when you find yourself sinking into scarcity, I want you to think about what is abundant in your life right now. And it could have nothing to do with business, okay? But when you can get yourself into that state where you look around, or maybe you go outside and it's springtime, everything's blooming, and you're like, wow, look at the abundance of nature. It puts you into that reminder that there's bigger things at play. There is a welcoming of abundance for so many of us. Like everyone has access to that. Like we can always create abundance. So giving yourself that opportunity to sit in the space. And then when you find yourself having that limiting belief of, who am I to do this? I want to challenge you instead to ask, who am I not to? Why not me? And I always, always, always think about this Marianne Williamson quote. You've probably heard it before, but if you haven't, I'd love to share. And it is this: our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. So shine your light, my friend. The world needs you. And number 3, when we lack confidence, we often sit in that space of worrying about what other people will think. And I could create a whole episode on this topic alone. This often too can look like imposter syndrome. Now, I was looking at some research on this, and there's a survey out there that says 78% of business leaders say they have experienced imposter syndrome. And I can almost guarantee you that the other 22% that didn't say they do now have experienced it at some point, or they just didn't want to admit it. But let's be real, I haven't met a business owner who has not said at some point in their journey they have experienced some level of imposter syndrome. And someday I'm going to share this, and I'm going to make this in a live conference setting, and I will ask this question of who has personally been victimized by imposter syndrome, and it'll be like a Mean Girls moment, okay, where everyone raises their hand and you're shocked to realize that, and then you're okay because you're like, oh, I'm not alone in this, everyone's dealing with it, okay? Except in this case, the mean girl isn't Regina George, it's imposter syndrome. You get what I'm saying. But let's talk about this idea about worrying what other people will think. And this for me was really present around the adventure that I am taking to Spain. When I said yes to this, decided to not share it for quite some time. In fact, my podcast episode that came out was my first time that I shared this publicly. Like, there were some members in my family that didn't even know until I shared that publicly for the first time 3 months after I said yes. And to be honest, I was really worried. I hate to admit it, but I genuinely was worried, like, what will people think of this? What will they think of me leaving my home, my husband Brian, my cats to go work abroad? What will they think that I'm not really going for a specific reason other than it's a dream of mine? Or what will they think that I'm not a college student studying abroad? Like, there's not that purpose or reason that would maybe make sense to everyone, okay? And so I had these thoughts, and it kept me from sharing that for a long time. And when I shared it finally on this episode, it was like, oh my gosh, a big breath of relief that I could finally let everyone in on kind of what has been a major part of my life over these last few months as I prep to go to Spain. And this is something that I have dealt with in many, many different areas of life, from like middle of college all the way through to now, is this nervousness about what will people think, like what will people think when I was a college student who graduated with this degree that I worked my butt off, but instead of using my degree, I went and pursued a direct selling business full time? Or what would they think when I decided to leave my 9 to 5, where I did end up using my degree to pursue the passion pursuit full time? Or what will they think if I made this crazy investment in my growth and they don't understand why? Like, what will people think? And what I found is this thought, this just like thing that it was like holding me back from so much that I wanted to create in my life. And that's the thing, is when it starts to stop you from putting yourself out there in the world or doing the things you want to do or living your dream, that's when it becomes a problem. Even in the beginning of my business, like couple years ago, I would call myself a closet entrepreneur, and I would just assume people knew what I was doing. Like, I put some things out there. They know I'm working this business, but when I would actually go to announce it, there would almost be shock or surprise because I realized that I actually never really shared this. I was scared about what people will think. And so I kept it really close to my chest and didn't say anything. And honestly, who is that serving? By you playing small, by you keeping it within yourself. So I'll keep that short today. I hope that even just kind of going through that story helped you to see that the biggest thing that you can take away from this aspect is to stay in your lane. Everyone's going to have an opinion, right? Like, we live in a society, everyone is free to have their own opinions, and that's a beautiful thing, and they can share them, and that's great. But their opinion doesn't have to dictate what you choose to do. Your dream is yours and yours alone. No one will be able to ever understand your vision quite like you, because it's not theirs to know. It's not theirs to understand. And that's okay. When someone is sharing their opinion on your dream, I encourage you to just let it roll off your back as best as you can. And I know that's not easy, especially when it is a close family member or friend, but imagining, I always like to use this visual of you're a duck just going through water. You're moving through life, you're pursuing your dream, and the water is just rolling off your back. So when an opinion comes your way, rather than holding on to that, we just let it roll off the back, okay? That's all we can do, because at the end of the day, you have no control over what people will think, but you absolutely have control over what you decide to do and how you respond to that. So keep pursuing your thing. Fourth, we're talking about when we lack confidence. A lot of the times I see this is when people are lacking confidence, they don't have an understanding of what it is their strengths are. And I'm just going to call our society out. I blame it on the way that I feel a lot of things are structured in like our school systems and even in like the corporate setting where we have strengths and we have weaknesses, right? And a lot of the focus growing up and even into corporate is what are your weaknesses? What can we fix that we're not great at? And it instantly draws the mind to what we are lacking, which is a really hard place to build confidence from when we're focused on how we're not enough. And I will tell you, that I have seen a major shift in myself in multiple areas of life when I made the decision to shift my focus to what my strengths were. How can I use what I already have and maximize that to the biggest extent? And it was such a game changer for me when I started diving into this of what makes me me, doing things like the Strength Finders test is one I always recommend. The first time that I did that, I was actually really in awe of the strengths that I had and things that I honestly didn't really recognize were strengths. But when I saw that and we dove into that a little bit more, I was like, oh, that is true. Like I do naturally do that, but I just never really pictured that as something that I needed to share or dive into more or talk about or expand on, or even think of like, how can I use this thing? For example, one of my strengths is empathy. And a lot of the times I used to see that as something that would be kind of a curse because I feel everyone's emotions. Like when I'm talking to family or friends, like if you're feeling it, I'm feeling it with you. Like I have that connection in that deeper way. And then I started to look at it from, okay, if this is truly a strength, how can I use that? And I use it in a way of allowing me to connect with people on a deeper level, to be able to hold space, to really create spaces and containers for my clients to feel seen, heard, understood, validated, and same thing even with my family. Like I tend to be kind of the go-to for some of these things because I do have that ability to listen and hold space. And it's been a huge thing for me to actually use the things that I'm naturally good at to help me grow and expand the things that I want to create rather than looking at, okay, let's say I'm wanting to do this podcast. My weaknesses are pretty prominent in the editing side of this thing and in the the whole tech side of that. And so guess what? I have help in that process. And that's the beautiful thing is once you start to determine too where your strengths lie and maybe where they don't, you can also welcome in that support to help you become the best and get your stuff out there for the world. So leaning into what you are good at. And if you are not sure and it feels a little bit uncomfy to think about what those superpowers are that you have, I would encourage you to ask 3 really close friends that you know will be your cheerleaders, not people who are going to be like, that's a stupid question, but really those people in your life who are there to hear you out and want to reflect back to you what they see in you that you may just forget or may not see quite in yourself yet. So I would simply ask 3 friends, hey, what do you think I'm good at? Or what would you say my superpowers are? Like, what would you come to me for advice on? Or another really great question you could say is, if I were to do a TEDx talk, what do you think I would talk about? And that one's really eye-opening, what people will end up throwing your way. So take some time, figure out what your strengths are, and take an opportunity to dig into that a little bit more. And lastly, when we are lacking confidence, a block that can be present is when we are also lacking clarity or we are out of alignment, right? Like we are unsure of what our values are. We're not really living in what is important to us. We are unsure of why we're doing the things that we're doing. And when you start to forget that, when your why kind of falls to the wayside, you begin to feel as if you're living this life in motion rather than with intention. And so that can often be a huge block for people when it comes to their confidence, is when they lack clarity on why they're even doing what they're doing. So I want to take you back to about a decade or so ago. I was a junior in college and I was introduced to a direct selling opportunity. And at the time, you guys, it was a major, major blessing for me. It was one of those things that I never saw coming, never expected that I would do. But at the time, I was miserable in my major. I had no time for a job that had any sort of consistent schedule. I was living in the design building oftentimes until 3 in the morning. So to try to add in like a normal working job on top of my major, I could not imagine that. So I was looking for something that would help me to grow, that could be fun, and where I also could make a little extra income. And as I started this opportunity, I began to think that this could actually allow me to get back to doing what I really love, which is, for me, a big passion of mine is music. And in this season of my life, I had put that dream on the back burner. I decided not to pursue it, right? Because I was worried about the financial stability and really the safety of life as I continued on. And so I decided to use this direct selling business to give me the freedom financially, but also to create that freedom of time so that I could then create in my schedule the opportunity to get back to doing the things that I love. And so while my friends were, going out, I was moving the needle on these things. And within that year, as I was wrapping up my senior year of college, I ended up taking this business to the top 1% of the company. And it was an incredible experience. I learned so much through that. However, I will say once we began becoming more of a leader in the company, I began to lose track of my why. I began to lose track of why I started this in the first place and the whole aspect of me doing more of what I loved. And I started looking at the next level, or I was told about the next, accolade that I needed to do, or the next title that I needed to hold, or the achievement. And all of a sudden I found myself in this season of intense hustle doing something that I kind of lost track of as to why I was even doing it in the first place. And what that created for me was a ton of anxiety. And I spent probably 3 years feeling incredibly anxious, even depressed at times, because I wasn't really understanding what I needed or what I wanted to do. At that time, my health wasn't great. Like, my mind was foggy. I was all over the place. I was spending less time with my family and friends, and I definitely wasn't doing what I loved. And I got to this point where I was so burnt out that I was like, oh my gosh, why did I even start this in the first place? And I recognized that I was so far removed from that goal that this career that I had taken, these things that I were doing, no longer aligned with what was most important to me. And I think that was a huge part of why I was stagnant as well in that business, because I wasn't living my authentic truth within that company anymore. I had removed myself from what was most important. And so I then was able to start to shift to, okay, what do I want? And I've talked about this in another episode where I do this activity. It's very simple, where I take a piece of paper and I draw a line down the middle. And at the top on the left, I write, I should. And I write everything that I feel I should do in my life. And so I used this season and I wrote, I should be grateful. I should keep going. I should do more work. I should see more people. I should continue to expand. And then I moved to the I want, and the I want was enlightening, you guys. It was completely different than what I felt I should do. And all of a sudden it gave me this perspective that I had been so far out of alignment from what I desire that it was causing me to feel inauthentic to who I am and what I really want to create in my life. And so I took the time and I decided to leave. And that was where the passion pursuit began to be born. And I started to build that and invest in that dream and really align this business with what is most important to who I am as a person and how I want to show up in the world and in what I want to offer. And so I think, I think we spend a lot of time on doing the wrong things or feeling like we have to keep sticking to this plan that maybe we started with, or we don't revisit our values as much. We kind of get misaligned with that. And so I often want to encourage you to get back to what you value most. And I ask this question of, what does success mean to you? Like, if you were to truly think about what it means to you and not in what you feel society expects of you, not in what your parents expect or a spouse, but what does success mean to you? And it may have nothing to do with the business. It may have nothing to do with your job. It may have nothing to do with money, but maybe it's everything to do with your family or doing more things that bring you joy or having time freedom or the ability to travel or the ability to do more than one thing, right? And so my point is that success is different for everyone. And when you are a business owner, you're already the CEO, like you're the boss, okay? And doesn't that feel exciting? So you get to take ownership back and really decide what you want to do, what you value, and move forward in that way. So I want to highly encourage you to take some time to sit with like, what feels supportive for me in this next season? What do I value most in this season of my life? What does success mean? And how is what I'm doing now aligned with that? And how is what I'm doing now maybe not aligned with that? And then reevaluate, okay? So as we're wrapping up today, here's the deal, my friend. If you related to one of these or several of these and you're like, oh my gosh, Haley, no wonder I'm feeling so stuck in my ways and lacking confidence and I'm really paralyzed before I even begin, and you relate to maybe more than one, I want you to not beat yourself up, okay? We bring awareness to the forefront so that we can use this information to propel us to our next goal, okay? So use this as an opportunity to see what may be standing in the way, not as a way to shame yourself or to guilt yourself or to overwhelm yourself, but to really use this as a way to say, okay, this makes so much sense. Like, this is why I am so stuck and not able to start the thing that I want to do, or I'm not able to launch the thing that I want to do, okay? And then once you identify the obstacle, then you can find a solution that will help you to remove that. Confidence comes when you keep promises to yourself. Confidence comes from when you take action. Confidence comes when you step into your superpowers. Confidence comes from clarity. And I hope that this episode is a way to remind you of what you're capable of. You have everything that you need within you to create the life that you desire, okay? And I believe in you, and I hope that this episode helps to reflect back and helps you to believe in yourself. I truly believe that the dreams that you have on your heart are there for a reason. I don't believe that you would have an idea or this vision for yourself if it had zero purpose. What I believed is that you are equipped with the skills, the knowledge, and the determination to go for it. Sometimes we just need a little guidance, a little loving hug or a nudge or a spicy podcast episode to recognize that you do have that. You have everything within you. And when you think about your dream being here, just know that it's waiting for you to step into your most confident you. It is waiting for you for the taking. It is waiting for you to take action. So use this as that push if you needed it. It is go time. Like, now is the time to do the thing that you want to do, okay? And I will be cheering you on along the way. We'll see you on another episode of the Passion Pursuit Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Passion Pursuit Podcast. If you loved this, head on over and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week. I can't wait to hang out with you again soon.